Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So yesterday on my Instagram, I posted that I was gonna do a Q&A video here, and I asked you to send me your questions, so today I'm gonna answer them. Meg.Rowan says, how many hours do you practice daily? That's a great question. It really depends on the day and what I have going on or what I have coming up. Sometimes it's as little as an hour to 2 hours, and then other days it could be 5 hours. I'd say on average I practice about 3 to 4 hours. Right now I'm practicing about 4 to 5 hours just because I have this recital coming up soon. But then there's other days that I might only have time to get in about an hour to 2 hours, and I just have to use that time as productively as possible. Bo Borales asks, how did you learn the flute? So I started in 4th grade when I was around 10 in our band program in my elementary school. We had the option to choose a string instrument when we were in 3rd grade, but I decided to wait for the band instruments. I almost picked viola in 3rd grade, but I'm glad that I held out and waited for flute. I can't really imagine myself as a violist. I just like to play the melody too much. Olga Cam _ says, how did the audition process go for you? Example, did you tour, schedule trial lessons, etc.? So I'm assuming you're talking about my audition process for my undergrad. I have trouble remembering now because it was a while ago, but I think that I auditioned at around 7 schools. So it was a lot of traveling and a lot of stress. I did not schedule any trial lessons, and looking back, that's definitely something I should have done. But the whole auditioning for colleges situation thing was completely new to me, so that was just something that I didn't know. I would definitely recommend taking some lessons with the teachers before you audition at the school if possible, both so they can get to know you and then remember you at the audition, and also so you can know their teaching style and if you get along with their particular style. That's really important because when you're going into music performance, you're going to be working with that teacher really closely one-on-one for the next 4 years. So if you're in love with the school but not the particular teacher, there's really no point in you applying there. NCIK21 asks, is there any possibility to get Ian Clark's sheet music for free? So his music is not in the public domain, but you can get it at the Flute Center of New York, and you can take 10% off if you use my code KTFL. Just saying. Zuzka 47723 asks, what flute do you play and what is your favorite piece in this moment? I play on a 9-carat rose gold Muramatsu. I'm currently working on Carmen Fantasy, the Hummel D Major Sonata, and the Poulenc Sonata. I have a recital coming up towards the end of July with my best friend Santiago. You might have seen him in my Can I Learn a Concerto in 7 Days video. So we're super excited about that, and at the moment those are the pieces that I'm currently diving into, so they're definitely my favorite. Chloe Noel asks, what are some pieces that a flute player should have under their belt? I'd say the Mozart concertos, especially the G major one, since that's really frequently asked for auditions. And then the other staples of our repertoire, like the Bach Partita, the Bach Sonatas. I'd also recommend checking out the Blue French book. And then of course there's the big concertos and sonatas like Iberic Concerto. But I think the Mozart, the Bach, and the French book are a good place to start if you want to start building your repertoire. Emma C. Vicker asks, when did you start taking ballet? So I think I started dance classes when I was around 3, and then I continued up until I was about in 8th grade, I think. So I was around 13. At that point, I broke my toe in a completely non-ballet setting. I just ran into the ottoman super hard in our living room. Kind of lame, not a great story. And then at that point I had to be out for a little bit. And then I started to realize that maybe I didn't want to go back to ballet. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the flute and my music, so I took some time off. And then my junior year of high school, 11th grade, I started to slowly start taking class again. And then by my senior year, I was back to dancing full time, like 6 days a week. That year was a bit tricky to balance everything with flute and my college auditions, but I'm so happy that I went back and was able to perform. And now I still take class for fun. I don't go as often as I should at this moment, but I absolutely still love to dance, and it's always going to be a part of my life. Olivia Chaikin, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, says, how do you like to practice double tonguing? How do I like to practice double tonguing? My favorite double tonguing exercises are in the Trevor Y practice books. I think I mentioned them in my Learning a Concerto in 7 Days video, but he really breaks everything down. And then there's also a single tonguing section, and I find that if I can get my single tonguing really fast and clean, the double tonguing section is then much easier. And apart from that book, I like to practice on the Allegro from the Bach C major flute sonata, and then also on some of the orchestral excerpts like Mendelssohn Scherzo, Mendelssohn Italian. I guess that's triple tonguing, but still tonguing, and then also Juilliard from Carnival of the Animals. Liam.Chua asks, was your coursework heavy for undergrad? Were you able to balance homework and flute well? So I went to New England Conservatory in Boston for my undergrad, and it's a conservatory, so all my classes were music related. I did have to take some liberal arts classes as well, so I don't remember the coursework being too particularly heavy. I think it just depends on what classes you take. It was definitely manageable, since at that time all I had to do was go to class, go to my lessons, practice, and do my homework. I wasn't teaching or traveling or playing gigs or anything. I did struggle a lot with solfege. I had never done solfege before or ever done any sight singing, so it was really difficult for me, and I had to spend a lot of extra time outside of class working on that. So I'd say solfege practicing and homework took up the majority of my time for the first 2.5 years at school. What the Actual Peck asks, what helped you decide to start an Instagram? Why go for an aesthetic? So I think I got Instagram back in 2012 or 13, whenever it started to be popular and was a thing. And back then I remember I would just use it for the filters and then post those photos on Facebook, so I used it kind of as like a crappy editing tool. So I didn't really dedicate it to just flute content until I started my master's at Juilliard in 2014. I remember I posted this photo of my flute next to a music stand that said Juilliard, and I was like, I wonder what happens if I use some hashtags, and I just hashtag flute, hashtag Juilliard, blah, blah, blah. And it got a lot of traction and attention on the post, and a lot of flute players from all over were commenting. So I thought to myself, I wonder what will happen if I post more of this flute content. And then the rest is history. And my aesthetic, I've always had an interest in art and photography, fashion, colors. So I think the aesthetic just came naturally from those things, and trying to push myself to be creative and to produce the highest quality content possible. Flute Girl Official asks, why did you start playing flute? So I remember that my older cousin, she played the flute in high school. I was just so fascinated with it, and I really looked up to her. So naturally I wanted to do the same things as her. And this is really vain, but I remember standing in front of my mirror, and I had this plastic recorder, and I would hold it to the side like a flute, and I would think, oh my god, I look like a beautiful princess when I'm doing this. Kind of a shallow reason, but then of course I did fall in love with how the flute sounded. So I'd say it's a combination of the fact that it was super shiny and beautiful, and that I also loved how it sounded. John Moore Flute says, how to prepare for grad school auditions. This is a big topic, and I could probably make an entire video on this if that's something that you guys would be interested in. But I'd say the best way to prepare is to start sooner rather than later. I'd say by your junior year of undergrad, you should be figuring out where you think you might want to apply to. And then I'd start looking at the repertoire lists, figuring out if you're going to need to make a pre-screening tape, and then start practicing that stuff. The more prepared you are, the better. That way you won't be stressed out trying to learn the third movement of your concerto a week before the audition, because that never happened to me. Rinda Renkins asks, what's your fave/least fave chamber ensemble configuration and why? I absolutely love all chamber music. Chamber music is my favorite thing to play ever. I guess if I had to pick my least favorite configuration, it probably would be wind quintet. Sorry, wind quintet lovers out there. more just because the repertoire isn't my favorite, but I still really enjoy playing in wind quintet. And my favorite would probably be anything that has a mixture of strings and winds. Christina.flute asks, how is life after grad school? I'm staying in music school so I don't have to face life. I feel that. It's a bit scary and you might not feel ready to be in the real world, but I would just take that plunge, take that next step. You're not gonna have the answers and you're gonna be figuring things out as you go. I'm still figuring things out as I go, trying to figure things out as I go. But if you think about it, you've been spending at least the last 6 years preparing for this, and really it's just the inevitable. I mean, you could be in school forever, but would you really want to? I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't scary, but there are a bunch of us out here who are all in the same boat with you and we're all figuring it out together. Julia asks, what's one thing you would tell someone who wants to go to Juilliard for grad school? I would say practice, of course, and work really hard on your fundamentals and your technique. And I would also suggest taking some lessons with the teachers there before your audition. Sarah Parker's Flute asks, how did you get your Instagram account to grow so much? Also, your profile is so aesthetic. Thank you. So I think that I had an advantage back in 2014 when I started posting flute content because there wasn't really anyone else doing that. And now there are so many flute accounts out there and so many musicians that are posting music related content. So I think I definitely had an advantage being back at the beginning when there wasn't much other flute content on there. But I'd say to grow your account, post consistently, interact with your followers, and be authentic. Haha, it's me, Bernia. I don't think I'm saying that right, sorry. Says they want to know my love story with my boyfriend. So Hedormias and I both met at NEC, New England Conservatory, in our undergrad. We were in the same year. I think I always kind of knew who he was. I was like, oh yeah, that violinist from some South American country that I don't really know much about. But he remembers seeing me in the cafeteria like our freshman year, and that he wrote to his friend back home and was like, oh, there's this beautiful ballerina flute playing girl here, but it will never work because she has a boyfriend. But then fast forward to our junior year, we started hanging out because we had a mutual friend and we would go to yoga class together, and then the rest is just history. That was in the spring semester of our junior year, and then that summer I went with him to go home to Argentina to see his family, and we've been together ever since. We were both really lucky that we both got into Juilliard at the same time for grad school so we could move to the city together. Now we're currently doing long distance because he's living in Pittsburgh because he just got a job in the Pittsburgh Symphony there, which I'm so proud of him for. But yeah, he's a pretty amazing guy. Speaking of Hedormias, he says, hi, what type of flute do you play? OMG, your goals. He's my biggest fan. Now I'm going to go over to the post I made here on YouTube and answer a few of those questions before we wrap this up. Alyssa Norman asks, how do you make simple notes and sounds out of the flute? So I would just practice with the head joint. Don't even worry about putting the rest of the flute together. The sound is the most important thing right now. Basically like how you would blow over the top of a bottle. And if you can think about aiming your air downwards as opposed to across or over. Because you want to direct your air down into the instrument, not blowing across or up. Thomas Mulligan says, what flutists inspire you? Do you have favorite performers you've heard live? What's life like in New York? I have a lot of flutists that inspire me. My top three would be my three teachers that I've had, Paula Robeson, Robert Langevin, and Marina Piccinini. They're all incredible artists, and I feel really fortunate to have been able to learn from them. I've heard James Galway a few times live. I remember hearing him in 7th or 8th grade, and I was just starstruck. I was blown away. I'd listened to his recording of Chaminade Concertino on my little pink iPod every night before going to bed. So that was a really memorable moment for me, getting to hear him live. Life in New York is awesome. I love New York so much. I'm definitely a city girl. I love the fact that basically everything you could ever want or need or be interested in, you could find it here in New York. And there's so much going on in the arts. Like if you want to go see a concert or a performance, the options are just endless. Katie Smith asks, were you in marching band in high school? I was in marching band in high school. I think that I did it for about 2 years. I didn't love it. I mean, I definitely had some fun times, but I don't know, I'm not interested in football and I hate being cold. So sitting in the bleachers of a football field in the cold fall weather was not really my cup of tea. But I did have some fun times and I'm glad that I did it for a little bit at least. I was definitely like a concert band nerd though. I loved going to county band, district band, regional band, all of that. Nam Exbo asks, was flute the first instrument you started on, and is it the only instrument you've played other than piccolo? I started with piano, I think when I was in third grade, so around 8 years old, and then I added flute to that when I was in 4th grade. Leander Elizabeth asks, what are some of your favorite warm-ups? I love warming up on simple melodies. It could be anything really, just something simple and beautiful that you enjoy playing. And then I really love the tone section of that Trevor Y book that I mentioned earlier. I take most of my warm-up and technique work from that book. So I didn't even get close to answering all of your questions. I tried to do as many as possible. So if you guys like this style of video, let me know, and then maybe in the future I can do another one and get back to some of those other questions. And if you have a question that I didn't answer, feel free to leave it in the comment section and I will save it for a future video. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content from me, and be sure to connect with me over on Instagram at katieflute. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.